Welcome to the Town of Ballston Proposed Route 50 Southern Watershed Sewer District Public Information Session recording. The Town of Ballston held 5 public information sessions throughout the month of February and March. This recording is for anyone who was unable to attend one of these sessions and is looking for project information. My name is Kim Kutkuski. I'm an environmental engineer licensed with New York State. I also serve as the sewer project manager for the Town of Ballston sewer projects. I'd like to begin by explaining that creating a sewer district is a process. It's governed by New York State Town Law, Article 12A. For the proposed Route 50 district, the process began in December 28, 2017, where a map plan and report was adopted by the town board. A public hearing then occurred on January 25, 2018. All of the questions and responses from the public hearing can be found on the ballstonsewers.org website. Simultaneously, the project team conducted a seeker review, State Environmental Quality Review Act, where different agencies were reached out to as part of a coordinated review process to determine if the project would have a negative impact on the environment. Some of these agencies are the New York State DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Transportation, DOT, the Army Corps of Engineers. On February 13th at the board meeting, a negative declaration was declared, which means that there would be no negative impact upon this review from this project towards the environment. The town board at the same meeting voted to establish the sewer district, however made the final establishment subject to a public referendum or vote. This vote date is April 18th. It will occur at the Town of Ballston Community Room from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Those who are allowed to vote are parcel owners of parcels that reside within the proposed district, and there are maps available on the website. The last time that this Town of Ballston in this area was asked to vote on sewers was in the 1970s. At that time, the projects were approximately 85% funded by federal and state agencies. What is bringing this opportunity to us again today? The answer is that there's a physical connection between the proposed Route 50 district and the Ballston Lake Sewer District. The Ballston Lake Sewer District is already approved, it's fully funded, and it's shown by these green parcels around the lake. There are 2 separate sewer districts if Route 50 proceeds from a funding perspective and from individual payments. But it's important to understand that there's a physical connection that would occur between the 2 sewer districts. Let's start by explaining how the lake project would function. There's a neighborhood here called Buell Heights. It would be a gravity drain system to a pump station that has yet been built that will be located on Main Street by the railroad tracks. That pump station will pump sewage along the west side of the lake, over to Outlet Road, out to Lake Road, and East Line, and connect to a county interceptor sewer pipe where the sewage is sent to the Saratoga County Sewer District No. 1 wastewater treatment plant located in Half Moon. It's a unique opportunity now for if we know that the Route 50 district would connect to this project, we would make this pipe along the west side of the lake large enough to accommodate these parcels. The sewer district, the sewer committee, before we decided to proceed with the design, wanted to know if there was any way we could pull in another dense area of town that's located within the watershed and has aging infrastructure into the project before the pipe is truly put in the ground. We know that once you do construct the lake, if Route 50 is not included, to look at Route 50 as a standalone project without the lake construction, the pipe along the west side of the lake alone would cost an additional $6 million. So there's a built-in savings of $6 million into the project numbers that you'll be seeing today. Many ask, why don't you make the pipe larger to begin with? But sewage would not flow properly if the pipe was too large. It would sit in the bottom of the pipe, require additional flushing, become stagnant, and odor control would be extra critical. Taking a closer look at the blue parcels, the district boundaries on the north end where Midline and Nolan Road connect, On the western side, we have Good Street, and this is Lake Hill coming across the middle. Southern, Kingsley to Blue Barns, and here is our town line with Glenville. And on the eastern side, where the sewer district would connect with the Ballston Lake Sewer District. Looking at the same map, focusing on the purple and red lines. 90% of this sewer district is purple lines. Those represent gravity sewer system. The red lines are low pressure sewer. It's important to understand for gravity, a grinder pump is not needed. For the low pressure sewer locations, a grinder pump most likely is needed. The map plan and report document available at ballstonsewers.org, also at the town clerk's office in hard copy, the library in hard copy, and the town website electronically. This report identifies the parcels located within the proposed district and assigns an equivalent dwelling unit to each parcel. We're going to refer to this as an EDU. And how do we think of an EDU? It's a unit of measurement. A typical single-family residential home would be one EDU. If it was a duplex or a multi-home, it might have two EDUs. If it's a high wastewater producing type of building, car wash, restaurant, it would be more than two EDUs. The Saratoga County guidance document that's utilized to assign these EDUs is included at the back of the map plan and report, and they were not assigned arbitrarily. There are 527 parcels within the report, 1,026 EDUs. Total project costs are $15.8 million. Homeowner costs. Homeowner costs are broken into two pieces. The first part is what a homeowner would see on a county tax bill. This is calculated by taking the total project costs of $15.8 million without any grants applied, calculating an annual debt service payment. We know that this project is scoring high right now with the environmental agencies for funding, and they have told us that we would qualify for a 1.62% interest rate. This interest rate was used over 30 years and came up with an annual debt service of $668,400. The total EDUs, as mentioned before, are 1,026. So we take the $668,400, divide by the 1,026, come up with an annual debt payment of $651 per EDU. Once a parcel connects, there are fees that are due to the Saratoga County Sewer District. These service fees include a user fee and collector fee and tally to $275. The annual connected charge for a homeowner will be the sum of these two numbers, and again, this is without grants, of $926. How does this number compare statewide? The Office of State Comptroller releases a number every year of a town sewer district value number that if you spend more than that amount, special permission is required. The project cost for the proposed Route 50 district, primarily due to the savings on that pipe, are lower than the 2018 state threshold of $995. Also mentioned that there's no grant money that's included in these numbers. The deadline for our grant application is June 29th. Part of the application requires that the state sees that a sewer district is truly created. So the vote date of April 18th is before June 29th, so it's truly not possible to obtain the grant money prior to the vote. We do know that the project, as I mentioned, is scoring above the subsidy line and has scored quite well. Those documents are posted on the ballstonsewers.org website, so you can see the ranking across New York State of where this stands. If we compare how this project stands with the Lake project, at the time that the Ballston Lake project was approved and voted on in 2015, it was actually above the state comptroller limit value at the time, and it was below the subsidy line, meaning they didn't know if they would receive any funding. The Ballston Lake project actually ended up receiving $2.5 million. We do know the maximum amount that the state agencies can provide under this funding to any town is $5 million. If the proposed Route 50 district received an additional $2.5 million, what would that do to your annual debt payment? It would reduce the 651 down to 551. The other moving part to this calculation that is run every year at county tax bill time is the EDUs. If someone takes a parcel that's vacant and they add a home, the EDU count would increase. If people are adding on to the sewer district or subdividing, that EDU count would increase. Each EDU, we know in the formula, is about 50 cents, and yet that may not seem like a large number. However, if one EDU is 50 cents, 10 is $5, 100 is $50. Those savings are carried out for the 30 years, and this amount is expected to decrease over time. So we see that the first part on the county tax bill. The second part is a one-time homeowner connection cost that will vary based on each home. The amounts that are printed in the map planner report are $3,500 to $10,000, and that's a very large range for many people to understand. The two questions you'd have to ask yourself as a homeowner is, do I need a grinder pump? Referring back to that map. Locate your parcel. Are you on a low-pressure sewer, and will you need a grinder pump, or are you on a gravity line? And then what is your specific distance between your home and where the sewer line is proposed, which will be at your property line to connect? Let's start with the grinder pump. Less than 10% of the proposed district will require grinder pumps. The sewer committee has reached out to a local grinder pump vendor, and they have negotiated a 30% discount if purchased within year one. This will bring the cost of a grinder pump from $5,000 down to $3,500. Second question is the cost of your individual home and the distance. But first, let's take a look at what is happening with our current setup in the septic systems, because there will be closure cost to the septic system as well. Now people have homes where the sewage comes down to a pipe and enters a septic tank somewhere in your yard. Here's a cross-section of the tank. The solids settle in the tank. The liquids go over your baffle to an outlet pipe and a distribution box. That box then takes the liquids and divides it into several different perforated pipes that have holes in them, and the leachate will go down into the earth. What is expected when closing your septic system? That the home disconnect from the septic tank. The septic tank is filled with sand or gravel to prevent a future cave-in from happening, and then a line is connected from the home to where the sewer main is. There will be inspection fees. They vary based on the type of inspection. It's approximately $300 right now for a gravity system, approximately $500 for a grinder pump system. And of course, the key factor for many is going to be that distance. We have reached out to contractors, and the prices vary between $30 and $40 a foot to make that connection line. The other piece for property owners to be aware of, it's the first time the town of Ballston has had sewers. A sewer use law is required by the state once the sewers go into use. We anticipate that there will be a required connection within 3 years of the sewer being available. The proposed Route 50 district, the first it would be available, is January of 2022. Therefore, a required connection would not occur until January of 2025. Other items that are within the sewer use law that are being considered by the town board, there will be a distance exemption. If it's over 300 feet from the home to the sewer main, connection would not be required until the septic failed. At that point, to replace a septic system is anticipated to cost more than the connection to the sewer. If a homeowner has a new septic system, initially the sewer committee had less than 5 years. This was recently expanded in the draft law that's being proposed this week to the town board to a period of time that if your new septic was installed within 10 years of the sewer availability, you'd be provided a 15-year from installation date exemption from connection. And lastly, there's a financial hardship proposal. If your income is less than 3 times the U.S. poverty level, you can apply for a 5-year extension from connection, and you'll be allowed to reapply in any number of times. All of these are exemptions from connection, which mean that the Saratoga County Sewer District fees would not appear on your tax bill if you're not connected. It would bring the 926 number down to 651 as a worst-case scenario. Public hearing date on this law is expected to be this spring, and the final numbers and feedback received would be approved this year. What are the project drivers? The first is environmental. The funding agencies are providing this type of funding because this project helps 2 different water bodies, the Ballston Lake as well as a tributary to the Alplaus Kill. Ballston Lake is currently on the DEC's list of impaired water bodies for phosphorus. It's called the 303D list. Many studies have been completed, and failing septic systems is one of the primary causes of the phosphorus. There was a study conducted simultaneous to the creation of the district regarding some complaints for a tributary to the Alplaus Kill. Second item is infrastructure planning. As I mentioned in an earlier slide, the sewer committee looked to see, is there an aging area of town with a high population density that would benefit from sewers? If you have a small lot and your septic fails, you have limited solutions. We also have business owners that are pumping and hauling their sewage today. The second piece is a project effect. An analysis was completed because we understand that applying sewers and adding that infrastructure to this portion of the Route 50 Hamlet area would have some effect on community development. Any development would be consistent with the zoning and town's comprehensive plan, which are both being revised simultaneously to this project. It is within the zoning proposal and town's comprehensive plan to add this infrastructure to the Hamlet area as an effort to preserve open space and agricultural areas elsewhere in town. On this map, we see the southern portion of the current zoning map for the town of Ballston. The slashed areas, or grayed area, is the Ballston Lake watershed. We have a unique division in the proposed Route 50 district where everything in the gray area would flow towards the lake and everything in this orange area would flow towards the Alplaus Kill. So a watershed is basically if a raindrop hits the ground, which way would it flow? Typically groundwater follows watershed patterns. We also know that the water table in this vicinity of town is very high. If we review how our septic system performs and where our leachate is going down into the ground or percolating, once that leachate hits the water table, it can hit a surface water body or come out somewhere else. In this section of town, we know that the water table is quite high. This is a remediation site that is at the corner of Lake Hill and Route 50. When they were digging up some dry wells that were found, the water table was found approximately 3 to 4 feet below grade. This high groundwater table existed back in the 1950s as well. This is about where the current CVS is. This used to be a diner, and there was a fire pond here. The water table was always very high in this section of town, and Mother Nature does not change much. What has happened also is in the last 20 years, we've added city water to this area. So we're truly filling the area that already has a high water table with additional water and no means of removal. I mentioned a study for the tributary to the Alplaus Kill. There were public complaints of odors in a stream that runs from where the new CVS is being built, behind location A, and this is the Burnt Hills Firehouse, underground in a pipe and a conduit, and then it surfaces again behind a gas station at location B, and then continues on until it meets the Outlaws kill. 3 locations were sampled for coliform testing. Coliforms are bacteria. A fecal coliform is one that resides within warm-blooded animals' intestines. EPA and DEC, to determine septic failure that reaches water bodies, would use fecal and total coliform tests to determine whether or not it's an indication that that is happening. As part of this study, a quality assurance project plan was created. It was a month long, and it was compared to DEC's water quality standards. The study is currently posted on the ballstonsewers.org website. The water quality standard for DEC fecal coliform should not exceed 200 colonies per 100 milliliter of water evaluated. The initial results of this study for the 3 locations compared to the 200 limit are shown here in this slide. At this point, the study is complete, and the full study is available on the website as mentioned. Infrastructure planning. We know that a typical septic lifespan is 20 to 30 years. Some people will tell me I've had mine for 50 years and it's doing just fine. I would argue as an environmental engineer that there's 2 types of failures. There's one that impacts a homeowner and will back up into your home. And there's another failure where your leach field isn't designed properly and you're impacting groundwater, which eventually will impact surface water. We do have data that indicate that is happening throughout our town. But when it impacts you, we'll focus on that. And you have a small lot and a high water table, and your soils may not perk well. They might not infiltrate into the ground to meet current standards. And that's not a good combination. An interview was conducted with a Hamlet resident that had a system that started backing up. They went through 3 months of pumping, doing laundry elsewhere while engineering and construction was lined up. The conventional system was found to be very acceptable, which is very lucky for them. However, they did need to remove their entire existing field and add new soils because of the space constraints on their lot. It took about 2 weeks for construction. Total expenditures around $25,000. And this occurred about 5 years ago. Also conducted an interview with an engineer in the area who's familiar with the hamlet. Designed septic systems. His engineering fees range from $1,200 to $2,500 for conventional, more if it's a raised pump system. But there's really 3 different options that are available. You can have the conventional system where everything works in the allotted space and flows by gravity. You also may not have enough distance between your leach field and the groundwater table, so you'd have to have a raised bed system where they bring in dirt and a mound is created somewhere in the yard. The raised bed system, if it flows by gravity, is less than a raised bed system that's required to be pumped. And the difference there is your elevation versus your septic system's elevation.